Hello and welcome to the Simple Online podcast as we dive into the latest in healthcare, wellness and everything in between. And I'm Rebecca Moore. I am Chief Operating Officer of Simple Online Pharmacy, and today we're exploring a topic that gets a lot of informal conversation in chat rooms, in social media groups, and something that I think it's really important that we talk about. With the advent of GLP-1 medication and all these weight care medications coming along, there is a trend where there's some skepticism about it and there's emerging stigma around it as well. So we really wanted to dive into that topic of, it's been called jab shaming, and the biases that surround this whole concept of weight care being managed by medication. And together with that, another topic that gets quite a lot of interest and engagement, and something I think we still know very little about, is this concept of food noise. The constant chatter in someone's brain around food planning, next meal, what I've just eaten. So I'm delighted to welcome back Sarah LeBrocq, who, as ever, I'm sure will give us some really insightful real-world examples of your experience on these topics, both from your professional insights leading your organisation All About Obesity and the many pieces of work you do to represent lived patient experience and also just from your own personal experience.
No, two topics I'm really kind of interested in chatting about. So looking forward to it.
So in our first podcast, we talked about quite a wide range of topics to do with living with obesity and the impact that GLP-1 medications are having with people. And it's such a vast area that, I felt like there's a lot of topics we started to get into some really interesting space on, but we didn't go into in a lot of depth. And I think our listeners will actually probably appreciate us going a bit deeper on some of these topics. So I'd really love to get your thoughts on this. What we're seeing actually quite a lot now is the stigma, not just around living with obesity, but actually the stigma of the treatment and taking the GLP-1s. We have had first-hand accounts from patients where they say, I don't want my husband or my wife to know that I'm on this treatment. I've had patients tell me themselves that they have been told not to speak openly about it when they are wanting to speak openly about it, because they'll get lectured. There'll be people that have views on it's not safe, views on you're taking medication away from people who need it, who have other conditions. So it's really interesting. There's even been media articles out there talking about jab shaming. And it feels like, there's a lot of work to do on biases around living with obesity. And now we're also encountering a lot of biases around how you treat obesity. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Sarah, is that something, do you think it's a valid concern? Do you think it's out there? Is it something that we need to recognise and do something about?
It absolutely is out there, but it kind of comes back to the same reasoning as why people are doing it around people that are living with obesity, I suppose, is in the fact that people believe that this is a choice and that people have done this to themselves. So therefore they're kind of then going, well, why are you then medicating or cheating your way out of it? Just eat less and move more, because fundamentally that's what you need to do in their eyes. So I think that's what's happening, is because people don't understand obesity and the science and the complexities like we've talked about, they kind of then think, well, why would you then take a medication? Like, why would you take drugs to kind of for something that you can just literally solve by eating less and moving more? And what we obviously know is that's not the truth at all, and it's not a choice, and there's so many other factors here. But that's what it comes down to. So I think the way of getting around this is just, again, that education piece around people understanding why obesity well, why people live with obesity, the science behind it, the complexities behind it, and then why people need treatment for it. Because you would never look at someone with cancer and say, why don't you just eat your way out of it? Like, don't actually go and get chemotherapy. Like, why don't you just get a bit more exercise and eat these foods? That'll be fine. That just wouldn't happen with cancer. But we know that there's very similar what's the word? Properties with cancer and obesity that are quite aligned when it comes looking at them as a disease state. But, with obesity, we just think people should just sort themselves out. But with, someone with cancer, we absolutely wouldn't think that. We want to help people. We want to give them everything we possibly can. And so it's kind of getting to the point where people view them as diseases on the same page and not one more deserving than the other, because that's what's happening. And that's what we saw when Ozempic was being used off license for weight care initially, and people were using it, then the stock shortage happened. There was then this, well, people with diabetes deserve this medication more than people living with obesity. Well, I will actually challenge that and say, do they? Like, aren't they both chronic conditions? Don't people just deserve this medication regardless of them, what condition it is? Because I don't think we can pitch one disease over another of having more worth than another. They're both chronic conditions. They both should be treated this, in the same way. So I think it kind of just raises that kind of argument, but that's what's happening. Well, I still hear it now when when I do talk about the fact I'm on a GLP-1, people will say, but so you're taking that away from people that should be getting it for their diabetes. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm on a weight management product. I'm not on Ozempic. I'm not taking it kind of off license. And I have a chronic condition that I deserve to have treatment for. Why would you kind of like stop me from having that? But it's just getting past that hurdle of people just not seeing obesity as the chronic condition that it is. They're seeing it as a lifestyle choice. They're seeing it as a pure kind of choice. Someone has done this to themselves. And I feel like that's the bit we need to get right for lots of different parts of the obesity kind of field, in order to kind of get past that kind of stigma that you just kind of get faced with straight away when you're talking about obesity.
Yeah, that's really eloquently put, Sarah. And what I'm really keen to do today is, you are someone that's obviously very happy to talk about living with obesity as a condition. I know there are a lot of people out there, because I've spoken to them in private, and I wouldn't ever, betray any individual confidences there. But I do want to give voice to the people that suffer in silence, that either, are scared to do something about it because they've been put off it by their friends, their family, and generally how they are treated as someone living in a bigger body, or have been treated by healthcare professionals, or, just for whatever reason they're holding themselves back from getting treatment. Yeah. And then also the people that are, have taken that proactive step, are seen good results from GLP-1s, but they're feeling they have to do it in secret. Yeah. So obviously, because those people don't feel comfortable to speak openly about it, I think someone needs to give them a voice. So I'd love to hear from you, first of all, for the people that maybe, I see people anonymously post messages in the many groups that are out there and that have spoken in private about the fact that they actually feel ashamed that when they go onto GLP-1s that it works, and it's not incredibly hard. It's almost like this, oh gosh, I'm punishing myself because this should be harder. Yeah. I should feel this much more painfully losing weight. Yeah. I'm taking an easy way out, and they give themselves a hard time about that. What would you say to those people?
No, I mean, I'm just really resonating with what you're saying there, because I've spent my whole adult life punishing myself in trying to lose weight, kind of by either a grueling gym routine or an eating program where I'm restricting what I eat so much that I'm I'm hungry all the time. So I totally get it. It's like when you suddenly have something like a GLP-1, which is making it kind of easy is probably the wrong word, but it's just kind of the food noise going just gives you this level of kind of quiet in your brain that you've just not had before. So it does feel easier because you're not having to have these millions of conversations with yourself and your brain about food and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously because you're then, it is changing kind of the hormonal levels and the messaging, you do start losing weight, and then it's coming off and you're not having to be in the gym for 10 hours a week or whatever. But it's like, but I think that's where it's good to know that we need to be having a holistic approach to this, because the medication will do its bit and you will lose weight with it, even if you don't exercise. But what you're not doing then is looking after your health overall. Yeah. And so the looking at the nutritional intake and the movement part of it is really important, because we want to ensure that muscle mass is kind of maintained, and everyone should be doing that no matter what weight you are, because for long-term health we need to be looking at muscle mass, etc., for kind of when we get older. And from nutritionally, we need to make sure the body's being fueled correctly. So all of that stuff needs to go around the medication. So it does feel kind of less grueling than it has before, and in some ways that's nice. Like finally we're being able to kind of manage our condition without feeling like we're being tortured. I mean, an example of, interestingly, like I know I'm late to the table here, but I've been watching Bridgerton and getting into that kind of thing and loving it. But I watched the spin-off with the king, who was obviously had his mental health issues, and the way that he was being treated by the doctor in the Bridgerton was, he was being put through some horrific things. And I kind of looked at it and really thought, this is kind of like obesity in a way, like how we have been treating that in the past. It's, you're doing these crazy things that we look back now at the king and how he was treated and think, God, we would never put anyone through that. But we're still like there with obesity to some extent. And I kind of look and go, I think we will look back and kind of go, oh my God, like what were we doing to people? How awful. So I think it's just for people that are kind of thinking, oh God, it shouldn't be this easy. Yes, it should. You have a chronic condition. We finally have treatments that can help you manage this. Embrace it, utilize it, kind of let you live your life. You're allowed to lead a happy life. Yeah. And it's kind of giving yourself acceptance of that, because I think I've spent my whole life thinking, I have done this myself, I'm shamed, I'm a failure, I need to do something about this. And actually, I can now do something about it, because I'm being helped by a medication to help me support that. But I don't need to do it on my own. And you don't have to do it on your own. That's what I would say to people is, please don't be embarrassed. Like, you need this help. It's not your fault. And please embrace it, and kind of if you don't want to talk about it, fine, that's fine. Yep. I mean, it's the same with mental health. Not everyone's going to go, I'm on antidepressants, by the way, it's making me feel better. But if it is allowing them to lead a nicer, happier life, then great. Like, that's not a bad thing. So I think it's about just everyone's personality type will be different. But if you want to talk about it, talk about it. But if you don't feel ashamed about it, because you've got absolutely nothing to be ashamed of at all.
And for me, speaking to these people, I agree with you. Health is a very private thing, and if people want to be private about it, absolutely. And one of the things we're really proud of is that our service offers a really high level of discretion, and it does enable people to get treatment completely privately, without needing discreet packaging, all these kind of things to just make sure that someone gets that level of discretion. However, at the same time, for anyone living with this condition, one of the big factors actually is the societal views on it. Yeah. And for me, it's, if you haven't lived with a condition, how can you have a really true understanding of what it's like to live with that condition, and also what it takes to treat and manage it? Back to your analogy of cancer, I wouldn't, and I lost my father to cancer, but even so, I wouldn't ever think to lecture someone who has cancer on how they deal with their cancer. No. I mean, that is a serious, very difficult condition, and that it needs to be, dealt with by the right expertise and support. Yeah. And I wouldn't ever think that I could give the right guidance or advice about that. No. And yet all the science is emerging, and, obesity, and you have to be very clear, obesity and cancer are two very different conditions, and you can't really compare them. You can't really compare any two conditions. They are very different conditions. But at the same time, obesity has been recognised by the World Health Organization as a chronic relapsing condition. Why is it that people feel they are perfectly entitled to offer clinical and medical views on that condition? And that's something that I just can't reconcile in my brain.
Well, I think it's because for years the media, the kind of, even within healthcare, kind of messaging has been that this is a lifestyle choice. And I think it's been the most damaging thing, which is why I hate it when we even kind of working with the NHS and various other organisations around, you know, obesity, when they mention the word lifestyle, it makes my skin crawl, because it kind of makes me go, yes, we've got to look at like the way we live our lives, but so has everybody. Like, I kind of always push it back and go, this isn't just about people living with obesity. The population of the UK needs to look at their lifestyle because we all need to move more and eat less. That's just fact. And that doesn't mean that that is the answer to then a chronic condition. That is just how to be a healthier version of yourself. So, but I think we focus on, because it's been badged like that for so long, that's what people can't get their head around. They won't look at it in a different way, even though the science is evolving all the time and we're seeing more and more evidence showing us that this is not a lifestyle condition. The media and the messaging has been so heavy on it that it's like you're having to reprogram your brain to think about it. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we've got, which is why things like these podcasts, you know, programs on TV, documentaries, just kind of going through the science and the data and evidence and just showing it more, just slowly is going to change that messaging. And again, bringing it back to mental health, I feel like that's what happened with mental health, HIV, AIDS. You know, people had a certain view on that. But then as the science emerged and as stuff kind of improved, people start going, okay, actually, I can see that maybe there's more to this. It's not as simple as we thought, et cetera. And I do think we're going to get there with obesity, but I think it's a lot harder because obesity affects a lot more people. And I think, you know, we all know someone that lives with obesity or has kind of struggled with their weight. And so it's kind of much a bigger population, I suppose, group. And I think it's that scares people as well, because it's kind of going, if we suddenly accept that people need the care and support and treatment for this, it is going to be millions and millions of people. And so suddenly everyone's going, well, how's that going to happen? Like, can people afford that? Can the NHS afford it? Can the government? Like, what does that look like? But I think we can't suddenly go, well, let's just ignore it then and pretend it's this, because that's not addressing what is actually happening. And we need to then go, well, how can we manage this and what does that look like? And yeah, it might not be the answer that we want, and it might take a lot longer than we imagine, but we need to start shifting the thinking and the mindset around this, because that's the key with this. And then you and I were talking earlier around kind of like prevention versus treatment, and they're kind of looking at it in that space. And you kind of go, well, actually, if we start looking at the popular, like, you know, for me, it's too late. I live with obesity. You know, I can help myself now with a treatment element. But had I, you know, someone intervened with me when I was in my late teens, early 20s and said, Sarah, we can put you on a medication to kind of help you manage your weight then, would I be living with obesity right now? Potentially not. Could I have saved a lot of money, you know, through the NHS, through various things? Not that my health's massive. I don't have really any comorbidities, but it's kind of, there have been things that have probably happened as a result of my weight that might not have done had we kind of nipped it in the bud earlier. And so it's about looking at things from that perspective as well, which I think it's hard when we live in a government where we're in cycles of 4 or 5 years, because again, things are quite short term because they're just looking for the here and now and what we can do. And that limits this bigger picture of like, actually, if we do this now, in 10, 20 years time, we'll see this benefit, because they're just not interested, because that doesn't tick their boxes of what they're trying to achieve politically. So I think we're up against so many different barriers with this. But fundamentally, what we need to do is accept the science and the evidence that we have in front of us around this is not a lifestyle choice. This is not a choice generally. And we need to, you know, accept that obesity is a chronic long-term condition. How we can then manage that for people moving forward is really important.
And you mentioned a little bit about food noise there, but I think it's worth going into that topic in quite a bit more detail, because speaking to a lot of patients, it's something that comes up time and again with every patient. Maybe they call it something different.
Yeah.
You know, food noise is a fairly recent kind of colloquial term that's emerged for it. But it's that constant, it gets described to me as a constant chatter about food. And it seems to resonate with you, that term. Can you help me understand it some more? How does it manifest with you? What do you feel?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't have known it existed until it was taken away, if that makes sense, because it's just like it's just your life and you don't really think any differently about it. But it was that kind of like you'd wake up in the morning and be hungry, obviously, like most people are. But so then you'd be thinking, well, what am I having for breakfast? And then I'd be thinking, well, what am I having for lunch, or what am I having for dinner? And just constantly kind of thinking through my food options, what's in the kitchen, what's in the cupboard, what do I need to go and buy, what do I need to blah, blah, blah. You know, it's this constant like conversation with yourself around kind of creating these meals in your head. And, you know, it's not just for you, it's for the family, it's for this, that, you know, it's kind of all of that kind of stuff. But then I think when you start taking the medication, that noise goes away in the fact that I mentioned this, I think last time, I literally sometimes have to go, have I eaten today? Like, have I? And I literally sometimes have to really kind of go, I'm not sure if I have actually, because you're not hungry at the same. And therefore you're not kind of planning the food, because it's like when I do feel hungry, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I'm hungry now, like let's get something. But it's not been this like I haven't had to like sit down and create my meal plan for it. You know, it's kind of I'm just then eating on demand because I'm hungry, and then I choose something. So it's very different to how it's been before. And like I said, it's like it frees up your brain to like focus on other stuff, because that takes up so much of your thinking, and I didn't realize it did. And I think that's crazy, because I kind of go, well, this is how people that haven't had a weight issue obviously live. Like, how nice.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Something I think I live with quite a high level of food noise. I've for various medical reasons, I unfortunately can't take GLP-1s. Even though with my BMI, I would probably qualify for it. And how it shows up with me is I notice I have a very, very, very strong food memory. I think my memory in general is failing as I get older, but my food memory sticks around. And I can remember meals I had 12 years as if I'd had them yesterday.
Okay.
Like the just
what, like the flavours that
flavour and how much I enjoyed it and how much I wish I could have that. I get like, you know, a favourite breakfast that I had with my uncle at his house in Italy like 10 years ago, whatever. You know, it sticks with me. And what I also notice about it is it doesn't take much to plant a little food cue with me, and then I've gone on 3 or 4 loops, and all of a sudden I'm having a banquet somewhere. Yeah. So it's also, you know, what are the things that actually cause you to think about food and interpret things that way as well. I find quite interesting.
But that sounds as well that you're linking food to memories and how it makes you feel. And I think that's what we do quite a lot as well. It's kind of like, it is like, and that's where I think it comes down to that, well, why are we hungry and why are we choosing certain foods? And it being that emotional eating piece as well coming in. And so like, you know, is this because we're hungry, or is this because we want the comfort from that food and what it's bringing? And because like one of the things I talk about, so I had a traumatic experience with my granny, which I've talked about on various guises before, but you know, she died when I was quite young. It was quite traumatic. It was in a car crash. But I remember with her, she used to take me for cake, and like we'd have sweets and things. So when I'm feeling a bit down, or my comfort is going for those kind of foods, because it kind of links me back to her, where I felt safe and the comfort. And I think, but I mean, I suppose I'm very self-aware of that now, and I can acknowledge that and kind of understand that. But I think for lots of people, they maybe haven't kind of put those relationships together yet. And it is quite hard if you are getting comfort from something and it makes you feel good, then why would you not do that? You know, you're not going to choose something that makes you feel bad versus something that's going to make you feel good. So I think it's about kind of trying to just recognize some of those things in yourself and go, okay, well, so why am I doing this? Why am I wanting that Bakewell tart, for instance? Because she loved Bakewell tart. You know, it's kind of like, and I'm kind of like, it's probably because I'm feeling a little bit like I just need Granny right now, or that kind of like what she brought to me. And it's just about trying to, so that's why I feel like the behavioral change bit is quite interesting and quite important, because you can then just acknowledge to yourself, am I hungry? Am I just doing this for comfort? Can I find something else to comfort me rather than going for food? And like kind of that piece. But that isn't fundamentally the only way, and that isn't going to take away the physiological stuff that's happening. But there are those other factors that come in that we can acknowledge. But just listening to you talk about it, I could feel that the feeling bit was quite big for you there. And definitely for me, there are moments where that's the case as well.
And very perceptive of you, and sometimes it takes someone else to recognise these things and point them out to you as well, which is where the therapy piece can be really, really helpful. So we've talked about that I guess almost voice of self-discovery you've been on, because you weren't aware that you had that much food noise until it got cancelled out for you. So what have you learned in that process, and how have GLP-1s played into that?
I think what I've really learnt is, because I'm not just eating for the sake of eating now, I'm eating when I'm hungry. I'm also very conscious that I'm not eating as much food. So wherefore, when I do eat food, I'm trying to make sure I'm ticking some of the nutritional boxes around. So I juice more now. So I'll make myself a green juice, because I'm thinking, well, if I'm not going to get all of these greens in, let's have a green juice. And so I'm thinking of it as fuel more than just kind of pleasure us in a way, or kind of, I'm thinking I want my body to function and I don't want to feel tired, or I want to feel like I've got energy. So therefore, what do I need? So protein, kind of, your greens, the kind of all of that kind of stuff. So definitely thinking more about what I'm eating as opposed to just eating what I want kind of thing. And I think that's definitely changed. And for the better, really. It's a good thing. But I think framing of it is so important, because before it was kind of like people would say, we shouldn't eat that and you shouldn't eat this, and don't do this. But now I'm just like, well, as long as I'm fueling my body correctly, it doesn't matter what that is, as long as I'm making sure I am ticking some of the nutritional boxes. But I'm kind of, I do eat what I want, but I'm just making sure I'm getting good stuff in there as well, rather than feeling like I'm restricting my diet and therefore probably, I don't know, eating 800 calories, but probably of not particularly nutritionally great stuff. So I think it's definitely changed in a positive way for me in that respect of how I'm viewing food and what it does for my body, rather than it being a negative thing.
And something that's actually really struck me with the patients that I've spoken to is, and again, it's back to the real understanding of the science of obesity, and for those that are living with obesity, understanding themselves some more as well, is how well educated those people are about the drug and all the trials. They have read everything. They know it inside out, probably better than I do, and they also have the cause and effect is really interesting. For those that armchair critics that have views on this medication and think, oh, well, you just need to eat less, exercise more. What we actually found was the lifestyle changes because of the drug were really significant. Over 80% of people were more aware of what they ate after taking the drug or whilst taking the drug. And well over 80% also had sustained increase of physical activity. And, drilling into that and speaking to patients, actually cancelling out the food noise helps you identify patterns that you didn't know were there. So we had the example of the woman that was boredom eating and finding herself still doing the same behavioural pattern, working from home, feeling a bit bored, needing a break down the day, going downstairs and opening the fridge out of habit, and then realising, oh, I'm not actually hungry. Why am I here? And, oh, I'm doing this probably because I'm a bit bored, So just that, because the noise was cancelled out and the hunger was cancelled out, it actually made her stop and think, I have no idea why I'm here. What am I doing? And understanding there was a habit and a pattern there that needed to be addressed. And she'd also, this is another trend I've seen with speaking to a lot of patients, is how well educated they actually are about their patterns once they've been on the medication for a while. Another patient was explaining, she's like, I now am really clear on the portion size that I need and how much I should eat and what my body needs in terms of fuel. And I don't think I understood that before.
No.
But the medication has helped me understand that balance of what my body needs for fuel. And obviously you can adjust that balance with more exercise, gaining muscle mass, as there's science behind that as well. But just that, education of what do I actually need? As opposed to what is my brain telling me I need, and those two things being out of whack.
What is society telling us we need? Because I think portion control, and even going to restaurants and stuff, I noticed that, like, when I'm on the medication, like, I sometimes look and go, I used to eat 3 courses before. I can't eat 3 courses anymore. Like, I would never have starter, main, and dessert. I just can't fit it in because the medication doesn't allow you to, because I just physically can't eat that much food now. So sometimes I'll order 2 starters, for instance, because that's all I want, is that kind of, I don't want a massive main course But I think the way that our society is set up in the Western world, I suppose, more than ever, is that it's all about huge portions and these big. So then you think you have to eat it because it's on your plate, and then it's that kind of thing. And actually, no, it's like, I'd rather have smaller portions of different things than like one big portion. And like pizzas, it's like, I now buy a pizza, because I still eat pizza, I love pizza, but I'll cut it in half and I'll only cook half a pizza now, because that's all I need. And it's things like that. It's like changes where you kind of go, yeah, this is really changing how I am choosing my foods and kind of how much I need of it. But I'm also not feeling like I'm deprived, because I'm still getting the things that I want. So I think it's interesting that it has changed that for me as well.
And then you get back to, again, the societal conditioning of when we're children, we're told we have to eat everything on our plate, and that stays with you through, that's that guilt about waste.
Starving children in Africa, kind of, that you always got told.
So no, it's a fascinating topic, and always learn so much speaking to you, Sarah, but in particular today, it's really been about trying to give a voice to those that feel ashamed or really embarrassed by it, or that they're really going against the grain of what their family, friends, partners even feel about this, and to try and reset that a little bit for those people, so that privacy, of course, and discretion, of course, with any health condition is an absolute minimum, but they should not feel any shame, any guilt, or that anybody has a right to that's unqualified to tell them what they need to treat their condition.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as always, we always encourage anyone, if you are living with obesity and you do want to seek help for this, please make sure you go to people that know what they're doing. So UK registered prescribers with an expertise in this condition, UK registered pharmacies, and there's many other healthcare practitioners that are qualified to give support in this field, such as dietitians and therapists as well. But do your research, make sure you're dealing with people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
They are the ones to give you the support and help that you need. And together, I think, the more we talk about this and get these messages out there, hopefully we will start to educate the people that don't live with this condition that it's a lot more complex and there's a lot more science to it than they're probably aware of. Yeah,
I agree with everything you just said there. Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Been great seeing you again.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I always enjoy these chats.
Yeah, look forward to the next topic that we get onto.
Indeed. Thank you.